Clicking the record button.
This meeting is being recorded.
Yes, this meeting is being recorded. Hello, everybody. Nice to see you. Thank you for joining in. It's our 14th meetup of our initiative, Agile with Ukraine. Today, we have wonderful speaker, Roman Pichler, right? Am I pronouncing correctly? we have Roman with us, one of the world's top experts on product management. Yeah, and today we have an amazing topic, dealing with difficult stakeholders. So before we give the mic to Roman, we're gonna show you some slides and tell you more about our initiative, and then we're gonna give the microphone to Roman.
Yeah, so please keep calm for next 10 minutes, and afterwards you will be bonused with a top speaker of the world. For me, it's like one of the most exciting moments because I've read your books. I'm on Ukrainians who reviewed Ukrainian translation, and also in collaboration with the publishing agency, I made some options how to win this book on my talks on conferences. So to see you here, it's a great pleasure. Thank you for contributing to our initiative. And now I need to switch to not so positive part of my presentation, unfortunately, and I'll explain why it's not so positive today. So yeah, we call this initiative Agile with Ukraine because we, as Ukrainian, we both Ukrainian, me and Andrei. I'm locally in the middle of Ukraine now, nearby Cherkasy city. Andrei is in Poland. We want to support the country, to contribute, to help, and we are not the most promising soldiers in the world, but we are quite good in agile coaching and Scrum trainings, and we like to connect people who want to share their knowledge with those who want to learn something new and develop themselves. That was a moment how we decided that we can try to launch a marathon of meetups with top worldwide level speakers from Agile world and guests from around the globe. And now we can see number 14. Fourth will be soon, I believe, with such a pace. But today was a negative moment for Ukraine because our neighbors called Russia, this country still exists, they launched missiles to train station in Kramatorsk, where people were waiting for evacuation from the city by green corridor previously approved by Russia and Ukraine on negotiation. There were more than 4,000 people, and as you can see by these belongings, it wasn't military people. And they sent a missile with a sign, with a word on it, for kids. We don't know what does it mean, but yeah, more than 40 people were killed, and hundreds of people are in hospitals. Now, medic people try to help them. So that's why we're not very positively approached at the beginning of this meetup. And I want to share with you a bit more pictures about what is going on in Ukraine. So the war is still in active phase. Russia is killing civilians, the war is still going, and some media switch context and start explaining how Will Smith slaps Chris Rock during Oscars. And it reminds us, you know, this movie, Don't Look Up. So the Russia nowadays, it's a new Nazi country who really behaves like Nazi Germany in Second War. This is Kharkiv Central Square, Chernigiv city, Sumy. Kharkiv Central Square is it's the biggest square in Europe, and Kharkiv was 1,200,000 people population before war. Chernigiv was situated even before Moscow and before Russia was created, and it was Kiev Rus city always. Maybe that's why they don't like the city and want to clean it from the map. It's Mariupol before and after. Also very nice city nearby Azov Sea, with many people working in steel and iron industry, and they help these Russian-speaking people with their bombs. This is Kiev, the capital of Ukraine, and this is residential building just 5-7 kilometers from city center. It's the second day of war, so no one was like prepared, or they even not declare the war to us. They just start bombing us. And this is Mria, the world's largest transport aircraft before and after. It was only one piece in the world, and now we don't have it. But we will build more. This is Igor Bellanov, popular football player. He was the best player of the world and earned this golden ball in 1986. And now he is serving in Ukrainian army, protecting the Kiev city together with our troops. That's how life of, star football player changes because of this. This is one of the biggest in Europe city shopping mall in Kiev. Opened last year nearby the house where I bought a flat for my grandma. And thanks God, 2 days before the missiles, I've pushed her to move out, and now she's in Germany and safe. But this is how the newest shopping mall changed because of Russian invasion. This is newest business center, almost in the city center of Kiev, 3 kilometers from Maidan, Незалежності, Хрещатик, and the city center. Opened last year and fully ruined by them. So not a military object, but missiles were there, bombs were there. This is Chernigiv, new residential district also. This is Bucha. I believe you've heard about Bucha a lot. And if not, you can go with this hashtag and find more. And this was the Yandex shows. Yandex is the biggest search engine in Russia. It's a competitor of Google, local Google for Russian people. So what are they showing for search request Bucha is images, and this is what Google shows for Bucha. So different reality for people. And when you are reading their posts, like, no, we're just, it's military operation. It's not a military operation. It's a huge war, but they don't believe. Their population even cannot believe in this because their media is fully working on it for 8 more plus years, maybe 20 more years. This is Barajanka. It's next to Bucha village nearby Kiev, about 20 kilometers from Kiev, I believe. It was just a residential house, as you can see, with many flats. And now they have a big window in the middle, or door, I don't know what is this. A few more pictures of Barajanka. And this is Zahar. He's 11 years old. He's from Bucha originally, and he was escaped at the beginning of the world, so he's now okay. And that was his drawing. He's drawing Ukrainian troops who should push out the invaders from our territory. Sorry, it's hard to speak. Now he's okay. And this is my side project with my wife. It's also an initiative to support families and children. UA Kids Today, you can find more drawings like this. Children drawing around the Ukraine and send these pictures to our online gallery. What else? My favorite Dobro Park, where we've celebrated at the end of January with my daughter and son and wife, and goes to Santa Claus residence. So as you can see on the right picture, this was Santa Claus residence. Open air park on the nature with many flowers in the summer. Just opened 2 years ago, and they've the army stayed there for a few weeks and then ruined it fully. But we are not sitting in shelters, not crying all the day. Ukrainians is such a nation who prefer to act and to do something. So this is the people from Irpin. It's nearby Bucha, also almost fully ruined. They already backed and helping local government and troops to remove everything from the streets and trying to go back to normal life. And also I want to share with you Ukrainian software developers, engineers, how they are working right now. They are still working. They don't want to cancel the contracts, They are delivering to production even during the air alarm. So we have such a people open with a lot of courage, with high level of commitment. So all the Scrum values you can see on these pictures. And we will win quite soon. And to help our country win, we organize this Agile with Ukraine initiative as one of the small pieces to the big plate. Yeah, and war is not so far from Europe. As you can see, we are not living on different continent from European people. We are quite near you. And we hope that we are fighting on this territory, that it will be the last such a war in Europe and in the world. And we can stop it here. We really want to stop it here. We are not fighting just for Ukrainian language or for other preferences. We are fighting for democracy and freedom, and for the calm and and good night in all the countries and the cities. And we are collaborating with Uniters Foundation, and Andrei can say more about Uniters because they're doing a lot of great stuff for Ukraine nowadays. Thank you.
United Foundation is the foundation that was organized in 2014, right after Maidan and Russia's first aggression on Ukrainian soil when they annexed the Crimea and started the war in Donbass. So just regular people who didn't know anything about being volunteers or how to help. They just stood up, they did it a part of their jobs, and they started helping Ukrainian people in the Ukrainian army. And they've been doing so for 8 long years. So that's how long we have war in Ukraine. Right now, the scale of war is bigger, but still it's war. And for those 8 years, they have changed from a small foundation to the very big foundation with a lot of partners who are super effective into delivering help. I know people personally over there because I was working with them in 2014, and we asked them, how can we help? And they said that they have a very good team. The only thing they need is actually a stable income of cash so they could buy more stuff and deliver more stuff to Ukraine. So the full-scale war with Russia has started on the 24th of February, and the first cargo, the first help arrived in Ukraine on 26th of February. So 2 days and help was already in Ukraine. Since 26th of February till the 3rd of March, a bit more than a month, they delivered more than 166 buses of help. They delivered 131 TIRs, big trucks, massive trucks with help. And the overall amount of help they delivered is more than 3,000 tons. Just think about that number. And we have 2 goals over here. Within this initiative. First one is to connect people who are willing to develop themselves with top world's experts like we have today. But the other one is to raise the awareness about what's really going on in Ukraine and ask you to help Ukrainian people by donating to this foundation. Artem has already sent in the chat how you can donate. It's pretty easy. So the participation is completely free in this meetup. We're just asking you as people who are making a difference by any kind of donation to help Ukrainian people. So you can donate via PayPal or you can donate via bank transfer. It's going to be in the chat. And also you can donate via the Polish website zrzutka.pl. Yeah. So thanks a lot for your attention. Right now, we give the mic to Roman to way more fun and valuable stuff for today. And please enjoy the talk.
Well, thank you, Andrei. So let me share my slides with you. I have a few slides prepared, if I can only see them right now. Oh, where are they? They have disappeared. How come? Very strange. Don't seem to be able to see them. Try again. Now they're here. Cool. So hopefully you can all see a title slide that says dealing with difficult stakeholders. So not easy to kind of make the transition from the horrible images that we just saw to talking about work-related matters, but I'll still try and do it. And there's a reason that I thought it might be useful to select this specific talk and share my thoughts with you, because, you know, for me, when we think about conflict, certainly for me at the moment, you know, with everything that's going on in the Ukraine, you know, that's what I tend to think of. Or maybe you think about other conflicts that have happened in the past and maybe are still going on to a certain extent in Syria or in Afghanistan and other parts of the world. But then really conflict is something we experience on a daily basis. I guess it's just the extent to which the conflict is experienced, or the way it is experienced and the way it is being it manifests itself, it's being acted out, that significantly varies, of course. So my tips I'm sort of focusing on product owners because that's the role. Product owners, product managers, product people. That's sort of what I feel like I know most about. But hopefully, many of the thoughts, the suggestions I have will also be helpful for you if you don't work as a product owner, but maybe as a Scrum Master or team member, or you have a different role. So conflict, I've already mentioned, conflict is something that is, happens naturally at work and at home. It's nothing bad per se. It just means there's friction, there's disagreement. That's it. And yeah, there's a clash of interests. It may not be a nice experience, but it's pretty normal. And as I said, it routinely occurs, particularly for product people. Why is that? Why do product people experience maybe conflict especially? Well, I think it has to do with how the role is positioned. So as the person in charge of the product, you would reach out and connect with users and customers. Now, that group might potentially be rather large, and it might also be fairly diverse. Users don't always have the same views and ideas, wants and needs as customers, and vice versa. Right. So, there can be disagreement there can be an element of friction, and you may have to figure out, okay, whose needs are more important and who should we optimize the product for, at least at this stage. And then product people deal with internal stakeholders, the business stakeholders. So for a commercial revenue generating product, that might be somebody from marketing, sales, support, finance, maybe operations, possibly. In these individuals, the stakeholders, they come from different business units or parts of the organization, and they usually have, therefore, different views, different perspectives. Often they have different interests. Sometimes they have diverging goals. So again, that's a source of heterogeneity and disagreement. And then finally, there are one or more development teams that a Scrum product owner interacts with. And as you know, Agile development teams are cross-functional in nature. So it's a collection of people with different skills. And because people have different skills, often they have different backgrounds. Again, often they have different views and tendencies. And so, you look at all the mixture of the individuals here, and you look at their backgrounds, take into account the diversity that we're dealing with. And again, for me, that then explains, at least to a certain extent, why product people quite routinely experience disagreement, friction, and conflict. Now, if we manage to navigate conflict constructively and deal with it well and resolve it, then it can be a great source of innovation. In fact, it can make relationships stronger. But if we don't deal with conflict skillfully, then they can leave behind a trail of mistrust and bad feelings. And unfortunately, many of the conflicts that I've witnessed at work weren't handled particularly well. Many were ignored or suppressed, but just by ignoring and suppressing disagreement and conflict, that doesn't make those conflicts go away. They tend to linger on. So in order to make things a little bit more specific, I thought I'd share a little scenario with you. And so the person here is, well, we've got Sophie, and then we have a person being spoken to, and this person being spoken to is the product owner, the person in charge of the product. So listen, I really need you to add this feature to the release, and I'm not going to take no for an answer, says Sophie, and she is the head of sales. And so and imagine you're now in charge of the product, you can feel your shoulders tensing and your stomach tightening. So you're not feeling particularly well. And there is no way that you can add more work to the development efforts. Your development team is already struggling with its current workload, but Sophie is a powerful senior manager, and she won't be afraid to escalate the issue. What should you do? So I think for many product owners, many product people, that scenario is not a million miles away from what they experience every now and then, or maybe have experienced in the past. A senior stakeholder comes and says, I need this feature and I really want you to do this and you must do it, and tries to put the product owner here under pressure. And I guess how we respond depends on our preferences and tendencies. But it turns out that if we categorize our collective responses, we can distinguish 4 different ways to deal with the situation, which are very common, but unfortunately unhelpful. And so these are taken from a book called Say What You Mean by a gentleman called Sofer. And the first way to now deal with Sophie, the head of sales, is to engage in what is referred to, or what Sofer calls, competitive confrontation. So it basically means standing up to Sophie and saying, telling her that there is no way, first of all, that the feature can be added to the development effort, as she probably knows anyway, or she might know. And secondly, trying to put her in her place, and not putting up with the behavior that she's showing, which, she's being very assertive. You could also say very directive or coercive even, trying to push through her feature request. And so it's based on the belief that I'm right as the person in charge of the product, as the product owner, and Sophie, she is wrong. And if I don't now stand up and fight, I'll lose. So I'll have to protect my interests. I'll have to put Sophie in her place. And any empathy, any understanding I show might be seen as vulnerability. So I really have to push back here, right? Now, if this is a smart strategy, given that Sophie seems to be more powerful, she's a senior manager, a senior stakeholder, I leave that up to you to decide. But I've certainly seen product owners engage in competitive confrontation. And it's also something I've experienced myself. That you stand and say, like, no way, I'm not going to have this. So it's based on the assumption I want to win, and and Sophie, therefore, well, she's got to lose the conflict. I mean, it's her fault, right? I mean, why did she come to me? Why did she request that feature? Why did she speak to me in that place? Why did she speak to me in this way in the first place? Yeah. The next strategy would be to engage with passive aggression. And, this strategy is still about winning, but this time not by engaging directly, but more indirectly. You could say it's a form of guerrilla war, sort of. And it's based on the assumption that I'm being treated unfairly by Sophie, and that addressing the issue openly probably won't make a difference. It could even make things worse for me. And so I might be non-committal in my answer to Sophie and say, like, well, I hear what you're saying, but as you know, this is going to be extremely difficult for us to accommodate your request. I'll add it to the product backlog, but I'm, of course, have to go to the development team first. And, we have to have a conversation about this and see what we can do there. And then I'll have to get back to you, something along those lines. And then I might go to the development team and say, like, guess what? Sophie just came and she insisted that I put this new feature on the backlog, but don't worry. I'll deprioritize it straight away. We'll never get to it. And, and she's a horrible person anyway. And I might talk badly behind her back about her to other product people and say, like, well, have you had to work with Sophie? Did you have to deal with her recently? Oh my God, stay away, stay clear of that individual. Oh no, oh my God. And badmouth her essentially. So again, it's based on the assumption I'm right, she's wrong, I've got to defend my needs. And I don't want to lose, I'd rather win this conflict. Therefore, Sophie essentially has to lose. So it's a win-lose strategy. So are the next two, even though the next two are less about winning, but more about mitigating my losses. And here, the third one is called conflict avoidance. And as it suggests here in the description, it's about ultimately avoiding openly addressing or directly addressing the conflict, really trying to stay out of it. And to a certain extent, you could say ignoring it. And so an example would be if I now rationalize the situation and I say, like, well, I don't feel good. I'm still really tense from the way that Sophie approached me and talked to me. And I'm still feeling a little bit, maybe anxious, maybe worried. There's still aversion or element of anxiety, or maybe even, strong dislike towards Sophie, but really, like, let's be grown-ups and let's look at this objectively. And is this such a bad thing? I mean, Sophie, she's a well-respected senior manager. Surely there's a reason why she needs that feature, why she wants that feature. We can go and ask her. Let's have a can-do attitude. Let's try and be helpful. Let's do a cost-benefit analysis and look into what could we gain if we implement this feature, and what will be the consequences, the drawbacks. And maybe we can't do the feature fully right now, but maybe we can split it and we can do some of it now and some of it in a subsequent release. That might help Sophie a little bit, and it might still be tough for the development team, but might just be able to do it with a little bit of extra effort, a little bit of extra push. And you might say, like, yeah, exactly. What's so wrong about that? That sounds good. Well, the problem with this strategy is that it negates, as I mentioned earlier briefly, the emotional side that is present. Conflict is not only a disagreement in the sense that I might disagree that 2 and 2 is 4. I might say, like, well, actually, under certain circumstances, it's not 4, it's a different number. And we're really having a purely rational conversation here. I mean, usually when you have conflict, there are strong emotions involved. They're negative, they're difficult feelings being present. And if I now kind of suppress and ignore those feelings, I'm not really addressing the conflict. So I'm not saying there is no rational aspect to it. I'm not saying you shouldn't rationalize. I'm not saying you shouldn't do a cost-benefit analysis. By all means, yes. But just doing that is not going to really address the issue. So, if I was in the situation of the person in charge of the product, I'd feel, really not respected. So I would really feel that Sophie's behavior shows disrespect towards me, that I would feel treated like a personal assistant. I would feel being coerced into something, but not treated as a empowered product owner who should be respected across the organization, as I believe, Scrum suggests. So, yeah, just purely focusing on the rational side, I don't think it's going to do the conflict justice, and it's really going to resolve it. Nor is the final strategy, which is referred to as passivity, which essentially means you completely ignore the conflict and you kind of just give in and you give up your own needs and you say, like, what can I do? Or, Sophie is that big, powerful senior manager. I'm just a little product owner. I mean, yeah, sure, I could try and say to her, look, I'm not going to do this. But then she's going to go to my boss, and straight away my boss is going to come to me and she's going to tell me, Roman, you'll do this. And so I might as well just give in. And it's like, I don't have a choice. And yeah, it's going to be tough for the development team, but maybe I can persuade people with pizza, vanilla ice cream, and alcohol-free beer to work a few hours longer, or something along those lines. But yeah, I can't do anything. But of course, that's not true. There is a choice. We have a choice, and we can decide to just give in and essentially ignore the situation, ignore the conflict, give up our needs, and in this case, also give up the needs of the development team or compromise the development team members' needs, or we can try and address the situation in a proper way, right? So these are 4, as I said, common but unhelpful conflict strategies. Now, if these are 4 ways to deal with conflict in a not very skillful manner, then how could we deal with such a difficult situation? And one way to do this is by using the behavioral change stairway model. Now, that's an approach that the FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigation in the USA, originally developed, and it was made popular by Voss' book, And Never Split the Difference. Now, the background is that, imagine terrorists have captured a group of US civilians, and now they're asking for a ransom and they're threatening to kill the people. And if their demands are not fulfilled, right? So it's a very, very serious situation. And if you grew up in the 1980s with Hollywood movies like me, you might be tempted to say, well, send in a strong special agent who can single-handedly free the hostages and capture the baddies. Job done. It turns out apparently the FBI tried this approach with a low success but a high death rate. So they developed this behavioral change stairway model as an alternative, and it seems to be a more successful approach for them. Now, no matter if we deal with a group of armed terrorists or a difficult senior stakeholder, the challenge that we face is that we want to bring about and encourage a positive behavior change. So in the case of Sophie, wouldn't it be nice if Sophie realized that, first of all, putting the product owner under pressure and speaking rudely to the product owner and treating the product owner more like a PA than a product professional is not helpful, and is not going to ultimately maximize the value that the product creates for the users and the business, right? So that would be nice. And wouldn't it be nice if Sophie opened up to the views and perspectives of the product owner and, be receptive to those, right? And maybe bought into the product goal that has been established, that everybody's working towards, at least the Scrum team is working towards. I think that'd be nice. That'd be great. Yeah. The trouble, of course, is that as product owners, as Scrum product owners, we lack what is referred to as transactional power. So we're not the boss. We can't tell Sophie what to do. We can't make her do something. We can't make her buy into the product goal. So that option is simply not open to us. In a way, you could say that's a little bit similar, compared to dealing with armed terrorists, that you don't have any direct control over them. So in both situations, we need to try and influence the other person. Now, the question, of course, is how can we influence Sophie? How can we encourage her to ultimately follow our lead, follow our suggestions, and act what's in the best interest for everyone, the users, customers, and the business as a whole, and not just push through her ideas and act following her own goals? How can we do that? Well, the only way we can do this is by building rapport, by building a connection, a relationship with Sophie. And I would suggest a trustful connection, a trustful relationship. Only if Sophie trusts us, will she open up to us? Will she be receptive to our perspective, our views, our ideas, and our needs? And will she be willing to follow us? I mean, think about it. Would you follow anybody's advice? Would you listen to somebody who you don't really trust? And trusting someone means that you believe that the person's not going to act against your interests. It means that you believe that the person, cares for you to a certain extent and respects you, and certainly doesn't want to harm you in any way. Yeah. Now, that then leads to the question of how can we build trust, and how can we build a trustful connection, a trustful relationship? And the answer in this model is by empathizing with the individual. Yeah. So now you might be saying, well, hold on a second. We're dealing here with what? A senior stakeholder who seems to show unhealthy behavior that clearly isn't acceptable. I mean, putting people under pressure, being coercive, and being aggressive towards product owners, that is clearly unacceptable behavior. And I mean, if we're talking about armed terrorists, I mean, those are despicable people showing extremely despicable behavior. I mean, empathy, what? Well, empathy doesn't mean that we like the other person. It doesn't mean that we agree with the behavior, the actions, the views of the other person. It simply means that we don't reach out with aversion or hatred, but that we try and reach out with a form of warm-heartedness. And we try and take perspective. We try and understand the other person's view. We try and understand the other person's emotions and underlying needs. Yeah. So it's about being open, and it's about being receptive. It's about being understanding rather than being driven by unskillful, unhelpful thoughts and emotions, such as I mentioned anger, I mentioned aversion or frustration, irritation, fear, anxiety, But I'm not saying not acknowledging those feelings, but still, trying to reach out with an element of care and interest and warm-heartedness. And that's something we can do no matter if we like or dislike the other person, no matter if we agree or disagree with the views of the other person. It may take a little bit of training, but we can cultivate our ability to empathize. The nice thing about that is not only does this give us more influence and in a way more power as product people, but it also makes us happier individuals. So 2 birds with 1 stone, as they say in the UK, which is a horrible saying. And so what is a good way to build empathy, develop empathy? It is active listening, listening actively to the other person, listening with the intention to understand. So there you go, there you have it. That's the behavioral change stairway model. And it's called a stairway model because these steps are consecutive. So you first have to start by listening, being willing to actively, attentively, deeply listening to the other person. So you can then empathize and take perspective and understand the other person. That then hopefully builds trust. And that gives you the opportunity to exercise a positive influence. So influence here does not mean manipulation. Something I'd like to point out. This is not about manipulating the other person. It's not about getting your way. At all means, this is about trying to help the other person understand and help the other person change their behavior in a healthy, better way. Yeah. So you can't rush this process. You have to take those steps one after the other. So it does take time. It also requires the other person willing to play along, at least to a certain extent. I mean, you can always empathize with another person, but then really to build trust and be able to exercise positive influence will require the other person to be cooperative, at least to a certain extent, right? So there's no guarantee that this process will succeed. But, whenever we don't have control over other people, whenever we can't make other people do something, or whenever you work as a product owner, then, what other choice do you have? So as active listening is the first and maybe most important step in this model, I thought it might be worth saying a few words about it. And by the way, I forgot to say right at the beginning of this talk, I'm taking questions at the end. I hope that's okay. Not too many questions are building up yet in the chat. And so I don't really intend to speak that much longer. So yeah, hopefully that's okay. So 3 listening tips that I found helpful in my work. The first one is to be fully present and listen attentively. You could also say lead with presence. Now, why is that difficult? You might say it's like, well, just listen to somebody. Yeah, what's the big deal? I find that I sometimes don't really listen to understand, and I don't really listen properly. I don't really listen attentively, but really, while somebody's saying something, I'm already analyzing what the person is saying, and I'm already formulating a response. So really, I'm kind of sort of half listening, and I'm listening with the intention to answer and possibly show the other person that I know better and proving the other person wrong. But of course, that can be disadvantageous for a number of reasons, not only because I might then filter out some of the information, I might not just receive the entire message that is being communicated, but also because the other person is likely to notice it. I mean, as human beings, we typically note if somebody really attentively listens to us and is being present and open, or if somebody just kind of pretends to listen, thinks about what to answer, or what to have for dinner, whatever it might be. And so listening to somebody, and particularly being listened to, makes that person feel valued, makes that person feel appreciated and respected. And so that's why it's a trust building measure. So I'd encourage you to try and practice attentive listening. It can be challenging, particularly if there's lots going on in your life, or if you have lots on your mind. And so one way to do this is to make time, particularly for difficult conversations, and not rushing into them. So, going back to the scenario with Sophie, you might, rather than trying to address the conflict right now and resolve it straight away, you might say to Sophie, or I might say to Sophie, it's important for me that we address the issue and try and resolve it. But I'm feeling a little bit worked up right now and quite tense. Can we please talk about this properly in a couple of hours, or later on today, or tomorrow, or next week, or whenever the appropriate time is. Yeah. So, don't drag out addressing the issue, hoping that it'll go away. Chances are it won't. But at the same time, don't rush into a difficult conversation. But take your time. So, it's particularly difficult to listen attentively and being fully present when you're still struggling with lots of negative emotions like anxiety and worries and aversion. Irritation. It's best to give yourself a little bit of time to let these reside. And they will reside if you don't feed them with negative thoughts, and then have that conversation. And then the next tip is related to cultivate an open mind and an element of curiosity, respectful curiosity and receptivity, and suspend judgment. So I find it's super easy for me to attentively listen to somebody and being fully present if, first of all, I agree with what the person is saying. It's like, yes, oh yeah, you're so right. And secondly, if I at least find the person likable, or if I don't dislike the person, if it's sort of a neutral person. But if I find the person difficult, maybe because, I don't know, there's been disagreements, conflict in the past, or I just disagree with some of the behaviors of you of the person. And then maybe the person is saying something that, again, I disagree with, then, it can be very easy for me just to fire off lots of judgmental thinking and think like, oh yeah, he or she is like that, and start labeling the other person as good or bad, or wrong or right. And so I don't make that mistake. Because what it does is it makes you biased, and what it does is, again, it makes it hard for you to fully receive the message. It makes it hard for you to empathize with the other person. It makes it hard for you to build trust with the other person. As I said earlier, you don't have to agree with what the person has to say. You don't have to agree with the person's behavior, but you can still be present. You can still be open and receptive. And just being that often helps the other person relax, and helps the other person, start changing their behavior at least a tiny weeny bit. And then finally, who knows? I mean, Sophie, after all, might have a point. Maybe the feature as she's suggested it is impossible and doesn't make sense. But maybe once we've explored why she needs that feature, there's another solution that we can find, and something that might not only help her, but might actually help, the Scrum team, the entire Scrum team, to reach the product goal. It might actually help us all create more value. Hey, how about that? So if we're quickly biased, if we're quickly judgmental, if we quickly label Sophie, if we stop taking an interest in her or listening to her, we might have missed that opportunity. And then finally, listen not only for facts, but also for feelings and needs. Facts is what is being communicated. Feelings is how the message is being said. So if Sophie has a red face and raises her voice, then those body language aspects, showing me that most likely she's upset. And it might be worthwhile exploring why that is. So feelings are gateways to underlying needs or unmet needs. And so they can help you by paying attention to them and paying attention to the other person's body language. They can help you understand what's going on with them and why they're saying what they're saying. I've got a few more tips on trust building techniques, but I'll tell you what, I'll skip them for now. And if you're interested, I'm happy to come back. And I'll summarize. I think that might make sense. So dealing with difficult people, I think, is part and parcel of being a product professional. I mean, it's called product management, but it's so much about people. It's about understanding the users and customers, understanding their needs and empathizing with them. It's about understanding the stakeholders, and again, empathizing with those individuals, and of course, understanding and working with the development team or development teams. And so I think it's important to recognize that the relationship building work is important for product people, and dealing with conflicts and disagreements is at least as important as other bits. It would be a mistake to say like, yeah, I know I need to talk to Sophie and sort this out about her feature request. Oh man, but I'm so busy. Oh, I really need to reprioritize the product backlog. And then I need to rework the product roadmap. And then I need to look at some KPIs. And then I need to prepare the sprint review meeting. And then I need to talk to this stakeholder. And then, oh yeah, I need to talk to service and support. And then I need to do this. And the list goes on and on and on. So don't do that, because I've mentioned it a few times. Unresolved conflicts don't just go away. They usually don't just evaporate. They linger. They affect relationships. They can impact our mental well-being and reduce productivity. Just imagine, I have this conflict with Sophie. I don't address it, or we don't address it. Next time I meet Sophie, I'll probably still feel sore about it. There's still probably bad feelings that I have towards her. I might hold a grudge, and so that'll make it hard to work with her in an effective way. And then finally, for me, learning to resolve conflict is a key leadership skill. I really do think so, and I think it's something that product people, but also other people who exercise leadership in the sense that they guide and align and help and support should actively develop. If we learn to resolve conflict, then it can help us strengthen connections and relationships. It can help us improve the work environment, and also grow as individuals and in our capacity to lead others. So thank you very much for listening. I hope you found what I had to say a little bit helpful. You can find more information on product leadership and product management and product ownership on my website. And related to what I shared today, or related information is in my book, How to Lead in Product Management. So if you'd like to learn more about conflict resolution, dealing with difficult people, and generally stakeholder management, then take a look. You might find it helpful. And then finally, I'm very much looking forward to your questions now. But if your question doesn't get answered for whatever reason, then don't be shy and reach out to me via email. So thanks again.
Thanks a lot for the presentation. And we have already received quite a lot of requests to actually show that slide.
Okay.
With additional tips. So maybe you should start with that one.
Cool. Okay. So I'm going back in time then. That wasn't the right decision then. That's okay. Trust building techniques. Maybe I should just quickly contextualize why more trust building techniques. Well, the idea is, the idea is that as product people, but also as agile coaches and scrum masters, you lack that transactional power. We're not the boss. We're not line managers. We can't tell people what to do and make people do something. Now, I'm not suggesting that it's good management to force people and be coercive, or offer an incentive like a bonus or a pay rise and kind of bribe people. You could argue. But I've certainly seen and experienced managers do that, right? And I mean, I remember well when I held my first line management position, and I said to somebody, well, I think that's what we should maybe do. And the person looked at me and said, like, yeah, Roman, I'll do it. And I thought, like, whoa, something's changed here. So sometimes you're just being perceived. You make a suggestion as the person, as the line manager. As if you have transactional power, and people just think like that was it. He told me to do it. So anyway, if we don't have that transactional power, then all we can do is, as I tried to explain earlier, is influence people. And in order to be able to influence people, we need to establish trust. We need to establish a rapport, a good, trustful relationship. And so, in addition to empathizing and active listening, what we can and should do is to speak and act with integrity. And that means basically not saying anything that is not true, and not acting in ways that isn't in line with what we say. So walk our own talk and only speak and say what we believe to be true. And that includes not sugarcoating messages. And not pretending or boasting about things. And so, I remember when I was working as an engineering manager at one stage of my career, I was working on a development project where we built a brand new product, a new voice over IP system product. And And unfortunately, the development effort was behind. The software development effort was behind. But my boss, he could be a very nice and warm-hearted man, but he was very old school. He could also get really very grumpy and quite difficult. And so, and one of the things he didn't want to hear necessarily bad news. So, in the regular management meetings, when we gave our updates to him, I would say something like, yeah, well, it's not looking that good looking at the release burn down chart, but it's not that bad either if we take into account that actually I think we could just, reach our goals, knowing deep down that it was quite unlikely. So, that probably wasn't speaking and with integrity. So, what I'm trying to say is it does take courage to do it, and it's much easier to write it on a slide than actually practicing it. But, it is a key trust building measure. I mean, usually as human beings, we're not keen to trust people who, don't speak the truth or don't do what they say. Certainly if they do that, do this knowingly, intentionally. And then get to know people and allow people to get to know you. I mean, that's just, I guess down to our nature as human beings. It's very hard to trust somebody if you know nothing about that person. And so it can be good to be willing to share. And that might be organizing some form of team building activity, but it could also be that you talk about things that you found difficult in the past and maybe share some failure stories. But if you want to use this specific technique, then maybe lead by example and first share a failure story before you expect other people to do the same. And of course, that requires that people feel safe, that there's psychological safety present. And then involve people in product decisions, encourage them to share ideas and concerns, and be appreciative. Again, no matter if you agree or disagree with their ideas and views and suggestions, and don't make the mistake and try and take all of their ideas and suggestions on board. That's usually results in a Frankenstein product, a product that looks horrible, has a terrible user experience, and a very poor value proposition. Moving product forwards, progressing products, creating value means making tough decisions. It's just the way it is, but it's still a good practice to involve people. It shows people that you care, that you interested in their expertise, that you're interested in their perspective. And even if you then have to decline some of those suggestions and can't take them on board, if you attentively listen to people, they do feel valued, they do feel heard, and it usually results not only in more trust, it also usually results in stronger buy-in and support for the decisions. And then be supportive and offer help whenever possible and appropriate. So, show that you care for people. Sometimes it's just something little, like, taking 5 minutes to talk to somebody or listen to somebody, maybe about a personal issue that's happening in that person's life, or a little thing like, bringing cookies or maybe a healthier snack to a meeting, assuming that you meet in person, to show that you care for people. But at the same time, don't make the mistake of neglecting your core responsibilities. So, one of the mistakes that I see product owners fairly commonly make is to take on Scrum Master responsibilities, particularly if the Scrum Master role isn't filled, if the Scrum Master is too stretched. While that's okay for a short period of time, I don't think it's a good idea on a permanent basis. I think that just makes a challenging job being a product owner even more difficult and usually unsustainable. So either you sacrifice your mental well-being and ultimately your health, or you start neglecting some core product ownership, product management responsibilities, and neither is desirable. And then finally, strengthen your product management practice, or expertise. Generally strengthen your expertise. Hard to trust somebody who doesn't know their stuff. An example that comes to mind, if you wanted to maybe go on a mountain hike, and you've maybe never walked up that mountain, or maybe it's in an area it's a little bit difficult to where it's a little bit difficult to climb up mountains. Finding the route can be tricky. Like in some of the Scottish peaks, for instance, where it can get foggy and there are no way markers and no clear paths. So you've hired this mountain guide, and before you set off, you talk to the person and you say like, oh, so you've guided people before and you've done this for a long time, and the individual says to you, no, actually it's pretty new to this. This is my first job. And you say like, oh, okay, oh, cool. But you've walked up this mountain many times before, haven't you? And the person replies, no, actually, it's my first time. Then I don't know about you, but hey, if this is a tricky climb, if this is a tricky mountain, I'm not sure that I'd be happy to be led by that person. I would trust that person. I might just say like, oh, maybe I've changed my mind and I don't want to walk up now. I don't want to climb up this mountain. So yes, strengthening your expertise can also be helpful in order to build trust and increase your ability to positively influence and lead others. So yes, those were the trust building techniques.
All right, thanks a lot. And we have a couple of more questions in the chat. And yeah, so how would you go about explaining a concept of maximizing value to a senior stakeholder like Sophie?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. I'll stop the share for now so we can see each other. It's an excellent question. And I think it'll depend a little bit on the context, or not a little bit, it will depend on the context. Sounds like a get out answer, but you know, it might be that Sophie generally understands how product development works, and that she's generally bought into the product goal that we're working towards, and maybe that product goal is also captured on a product roadmap, and that she's generally aware of the product roadmap and, you know, generally supportive. But that she's just super stressed, and, you know, maybe there's something going on in her work. Maybe, you know, she's had some new aggressive sales targets, or maybe she's just found out that she's not meeting some of her sales targets, or some of her team members aren't meeting them, and she believes that in order to protect her interest or the interest of her team, her group, she really has to push for this feature now to achieve her team's or her personal objectives, for instance. And I think then it's really, you know, a conversation around trying to understand how we can somehow help her without compromising the product goal, without compromising the product development effort, without making work more difficult for the development team. If she hasn't really bought into the development approach, if she hasn't really bought into and understood an agile way of working, for instance, or if she doesn't really show any respect for an agreed product roadmap and an agreed product goal, I think it'll be a very different conversation. It'll be a different approach that's probably needed. But so I think there's you know, I would suggest that you probably need to address the conflict first, before you can then talk about or try and educate Sophie in the right way, and you know, help her understand why it's important to have an empowered product owner, why it's important to respect sustainable pace, you know, for everyone involved in the development effort. Yeah. So, don't know if that was useful.
Yeah. Okay. Do we have any other questions?
Yeah, there was first question before. It's related. It takes time to build trust. What we can do right away once conflict occurred?
What can we do right away when a conflict occurs? I think the first thing to do is to recognize that there's conflict. I mean, you know, I'm very good at ignoring feelings that I don't really want to notice. And, you know, the number of reasons, I mean, you know, difficult feelings aren't pleasant. So, you know, it's a little bit like you hurt yourself, or something's hurting. You know, one way is just to ignore it and push it away. And then, you know, it's also down to conditioning and self-view. I mean, I think particularly male human beings often still think that, you know, showing feelings and recognizing feelings and dealing with particularly difficult feelings is a thought of weakness. It's not in line with, you know, some people's self-view, and particularly if you work in a male-dominated tech company, then, you know, those are beliefs, collective beliefs that I've certainly witnessed, and those are some beliefs that, you know, I still hold deep inside me. So sometimes, you know, we have those beliefs without being fully aware of them or aware of them at all. So, you know, really recognize that there's conflict and take a deep breath, and don't rush into anything. You know, don't rush into trying to resolve the conflict. Don't try into kind of pushing back on Sophie. Don't rush into agreeing to anything. Just notice that, wow, this is really difficult, or I'm feeling really uncomfortable now, or I'm feeling weird, I'm feeling anxious, I'm feeling there's an element of aversion, I really dislike, you know, how the way Sophie is spoken to me and how she's behaved towards me, and just recognize that, and then think about what to do next. And as I said, give yourself the time to have that reflection, and tell Sophie or tell the other person, look, it's important for me that we sort this out, but I need a little bit of time right now. I can't do this straight away. You know, I hope you'll understand. So that's what I would do. And, you know, again, that then allows you to let negative thoughts and feelings reside and be more, in a way, objective without ignoring the issue, and think about what's now the best conflict resolution strategy. I mean, what I showed you, to be honest, is not so much a conflict resolution framework. It's actually a framework to negotiate with people. But if you look at common negotiation frameworks, then first of all, they're applied in a situation where there is a level of conflict or disagreement. And secondly, they also try and reach a shared outcome. And they also try and ultimately connect parties. So to really, you know, negotiate successfully, you don't compromise. You try and reach an outcome that truly works for both parties. But, you know, you could consider using a framework like nonviolent communication, which I describe in my book, and which tries to establish a dialogue. And it's not too dissimilar in the sense that it's all about empathizing with the other person, but it really kind of nicely suggests some steps that you can take, assuming the other person is willing to walk along with you and be cooperative and engage in the right way. But yeah, give yourself the time to think about next steps. And, you know, sometimes if a person just really behaved in a completely unacceptable way, or if you feel you're way out of your depth, or you can't resolve the situation on your own, it may mean that you have to involve, you know, the Scrum Master, your line manager, or human resources. So recognize the conflict and then think about how to best deal with the situation.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So while you are typing your questions, let us remind you that don't forget to donate for our cause. All of the links are in the chat, so don't forget to donate. And do we have any other questions?
You can ask me questions that aren't strictly related to the talk as well, if you'd like to. I mean, you can ask me any question. I'm not sure that I can answer all of them, but you can always ask.
Oh, we can't hear you.
Okay.
Oh, now we can hear you.
Sorry. That helps, right? Yeah.
Usually.
So this is a very self-serving question, but I am a product owner currently, and I think I need to give you a little context. So I have started the first ever product owner role that I worked in was very embraced the Agile mindset rather than the Agile necessarily the practices. So that was my first foray into Agile, which meant that it's what I thought Agile was, right? So then I spent a couple of years there, and then the last year and a half or so, I've been doing some contracting work. And what I've realized then is, since that point, is that that it was the exception to the rule. That I was fortunate to be able to start out in an environment which, as a product owner, I was a part of the Scrum team, along with the Scrum Master and all of the developers. All of us had equal voices. We participated very collaboratively with constructive conflict, you know, and respect. And so again, so I left that role thinking that's Agile, right? Okay, great. I like this Agile thing. Since then, I've been in some contracts, and none of them have, although professing to be Agile, have been, kind of almost agile in name only. And I have realized over the last, say, year and a half, what a villain I am perceived to be as a product owner. And I see that actually be quite pervasive in many meetups, podcasts, articles, books, where somehow the product owner, which from the Scrum guide, which is the framework I'm most familiar with, is supposed to be a part of the team, literally, with an equal voice. So at this point in my career, I am looking to, I think, make a transition to Scrum Master, because I feel like it will fit maybe my personality a little better, where I really am looking for that. I think I fit better into that servant leadership perspective, always wanting to learn, grow, develop, teach, learn from teaching. And I am not that dictator product owner that will come in and say, we're not green. I've never been a project manager. That actually gives me hives. Gathering requirements gives me hives. Gantt charts gives me hives. I mean, this is just not things that I'm comfortable with or want to do ever. So my question now, with that context, is moving from product ownership into a Scrum Master, maybe potentially even a coach, because I feel like I am an Agile enthusiast, and I really enjoy Agile from the perspective that if done well, it can really create such a positive and collaborative culture. And that is absolutely what I'm looking to build, develop, and be a part of. And now that I've seen so much dysfunction and anti-patterns, there's a need for that. But I'm the product owner villain now, thinking maybe that Scrum Master is a better fit for me and my personality and my career goals. Have you seen that? And if so, I'm sure, given your experience, you probably have. What are the kind of benefits, kind of the positives that I may be able to reap from that? And what are some of the challenges that I may need to overcome?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing the context and asking the question. I think ultimately you'll have to decide for yourself what is right for you, and if that's the right career change. Maybe it's helpful to kind of briefly contrast the two roles and reflect on the kind of key focus. So for me, when I think about the Scrum product owner, I don't think about a product dictator, by the way, or a project manager. I think both are anti-patterns. I wrote an article a few years back called Don't Be a Feature Broker or Product Dictator, but a Balanced Product Owner, or something along those lines. So you can check that out if you want to. So I see the product owner in Scrum as the person who really offers product leadership and is, I mean, as the Scrum guide suggests, responsible for maximizing the value that the product creates. And so, you know, maximizing the value towards the market, the users and customers. You know, if there are customers, I mean, if it's an internal product, then it's the internal users, and towards the business, the organization as a whole. That's the job of the product owner. And then obviously what that means will very much depend on the product you look after and the organization you work in. But it typically involves setting a vision and getting the stakeholders and the development team members buy into that vision, collaboratively creating and validating and evolving a product strategy, collaboratively building and inspecting and adapting a product roadmap, including setting product goals, jointly stocking and working on the product backlog. So for me, a good product owner is somebody who has product management expertise and has clear views and ideas, but is very much willing and able to be a team player and be collaborative and listen to other people, without making the mistake of trying to please everyone, right? So I've mentioned that very briefly in my talk. Two big mistakes I see people make when it comes to collaboration and joint decision-making is either being authoritarian or allowing the most senior person in the room to dominate. And then the other mistake is to try and broker a weak compromise and try and please everyone. So, those are kind of anti-patterns of collaboration and collaborative decision-making. And then contrast this with the Scrum Master. And for me, the Scrum Master is somebody who should offer process and people leadership, somebody who should offer coaching and advisory services to the development team and the product owner, and help the individuals grow and get better at what they do as much as that's possible, and offer some positive feedback and encouragement, but also to a certain extent develop and coach and grow the organization, and help the stakeholders understand what Agile is and what desired Agile behaviors are and aren't. And when you go back to the very first Scrum book, written by Ken Schwaber and Mike Beadle, and I think it was published in 2002, called Agile Software Development with Scrum, you'll find that the Scrum Master is referred to as a change agent. So Scrum Master should also help with organizational development and change. And I've seen Scrum Masters who helped find new team members by pre-selecting CVs, for instance, and then inviting candidates, and then the development team members would participate in an interview. So, some organizations take the Scrum Master role quite far. And so I think you have to decide for yourself, what are you more comfortable with? Are you more comfortable with the product side? Are you more comfortable ultimately in the product management space? And you're interested in, as I said, product strategy? Are you interested in product road mapping? Are you interested in requirements or user stories? Are you interested in carrying out some form of user and market research, in collecting feedback, in working with data, KPIs, in understanding the business model, and maybe creating a financial forecast? Or are you more interested in coaching people, and developing organizations ultimately? Both jobs can be very rewarding. Both jobs can be challenging. And both jobs, I think, do require their own expertise. So I think, you have to give yourself some time to really develop as a product owner, and you have to give yourself some time to develop as a Scrum Master. So, if you're in doubt, try it out, see how you like the Scrum Master role, play it for maybe 6 to 12 months. And then you've experienced both sides, and then, decide where to take it from there.
So if I may make one comment, I think you described the utopia situation, that is a product owner and a Scrum Master, the way they should function. What I've found is that's not, that the way they should function, the way they should be empowered to function. And that fortunately was my first experience. And what I was trying to say is, and this may help, is I work, I'm actually background is, I'm a registered nurse. So I very specifically choose healthcare applications in regards to development, which is very risk averse and generally is hierarchical and have a difficult transition to the Agile mindset. So just a little bit more context there.
Sure. Yeah.
So
thanks.
I'm learning a lot more to overcome. So
yeah. No, I mean, thanks for that. I've worked with a number of healthcare organizations over the years, and what you say resonates with me. And I recognize that your experience, and the experience from some of the other people who are on the call and are in the meeting, may be somewhat different from what I've described. But that's just what we're currently experiencing. The organizations that we currently work in now, we've got two choices. We can say that would be a great way to apply those roles. And that's the first thing. The first thing is to be clear on how are those roles meant to be applied in order to really work effectively in an Agile way and to effectively apply Scrum. That's the first thing you need to understand. What's the target process? What's the work environment that we'd like to create? And once you've understand this, you can ask yourself, well, what would be a first step towards it? and what can we do to bring about change? And maybe there's a lot you can do to bring about change because you have a lot of influence, possibly you have a lot of power. Maybe there's very little. But the least thing you can do is try and act in a way that is conducive or in line with how the role is intended to be applied. Many organizations I've seen didn't even understand what the Scrum product owner role is about. Many organizations I see treat the Scrum Master as as an assistant and as a role that can be easily, taken on by anybody, or you don't really need. We've been doing Agile for a few years now. We don't need any Scrum Masters anymore. Yes. And sure, we've got product owners, but really they act more as kind of a mixture of team lead, business analyst, and project manager.
They're not
properly empowered. But I mean, these are anti-patterns. And yes, I mean, that's just then the state of Agile maturity and product management maturity in a specific organization. But, no organization is perfect. So I hope that was a little bit helpful.
It was. Thank you so much, Roman. I appreciate that.
Pleasure.
Of course, I'm muted. Yeah, we have a request to provide the name of the books you referenced.
Oh, yes. I'm always very happy to plug my books. So the book that I mentioned is called How to Lead in Product Management. And the idea is to offer practices, techniques for product people to guide and align stakeholders and development teams. So I talk about collaborative decision-making techniques in this book. I talk about effective communication, effective conversations. I talk about active listening, but also about helpful speaking techniques. I talk about goal setting techniques and what kind of goals are helpful for product people and how those goals help you align stakeholders and development teams. I try and clarify roles and responsibilities. I talk a little bit about leadership styles. And what else do I do? Talk a little bit about self-leadership as well, because I think if we want to grow our ability to lead others, then we also have to get better at leading ourselves. So yeah, I mean, take a look. It's available through various outlets, including Apple Books and Google Books and Amazon. And usually you can download a sample chapter from my website as well if you want to check it out, or you can see the table of contents certainly on Amazon and maybe selected excerpts and then see if that resonates with you or not.
Yeah, and there were also questions about this behavioral change stairway model. Are there any books related to the model?
Yeah, Steve Foss, I believe, is the name of the author. So it's also a model that I mention in my book and discuss in my book. And the title of the book is Never Split the Difference. So the idea, it nicely summarizes a core negotiation idea, and that is it's not about agreeing on the smallest common denominator, negotiating a weak compromise. That's not successful negotiation. And a successful negotiation happens when we have a sustainable agreement that addresses the underlying needs of both parties. That's the idea, at least.
Thank you.
Doesn't always happen, of course, in reality.
Okay.
Yeah, while others are thinking about to ask something, I want to invite you while are you still with us. Tomorrow on Saturday we have another meetup. Maybe you have nothing to do on Saturday, so we can propose you an interesting topic about finding confidence in conflict and negotiation. I don't know how, it's absolutely accidentally, but these themes of topics are related and go one after another. It will be Aina Alif. She's now in Canada. So please join us tomorrow. And thanks, Roman, once again. It was a pleasure to have you as a speaker today. Any other questions from guests, auditorium? Feedbacks, smiles, Friday evening cheers? I don't know.
I just added a link just that might, so in regards to the, Chris Voss actually has, it's a little, right at an hour, a video on YouTube for that Never Split the Difference that might be interesting for someone who, that's immediately available and be a good adjunct or addition to the book. So just threw it in there in case anybody's interested.
Great. Thank you. Now it's time to turn off the recording.
Yeah.
And then we can speak less formal.
Exactly. Thanks once again. Thanks, Roman.
Thanks, everyone.
And don't forget to donate. And see you tomorrow. And also
don't forget to subscribe on this channel if you're looking at us on YouTube.
Exactly.
Well, thanks for having me. And I hope what I had to share was a little bit useful, and good luck with all your conflicts and difficult stakeholders.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.